Welcome to Pages from Apache County History with Dolly Patterson. I don't consider myself an expert on local history, but I do have a deep love for the history of our county and a passion for preserving and sharing it, especially the untold stories. Our first episode is going to highlight one of my favorite figures in local history, this one from the St. John's area, a true patriot and hero. Maximiliano C. Lucero, or Max as he was affectionately known, was born in 1910 in the Fence Lake, New Mexico area to Placido Lucero and Andreta Candelaria. He lived there for the first 8 or 9 years of his life, helping his sheepherder father and also working with the Garcia cattle operation for $7 a month, where he cared for and worked with six-pack burros. They came to Arizona when he was around 9 years old and settled in the St. John's area, and he later worked for the Barths and also the Babbitt Cattle Company. Max was a crack shot with a rifle, mainly because most of his meals depended on his ability as a rifleman. He was known for hitting animals on the run. In 1940, jobs were hard to come by in the area and he needed a change, so Max enlisted in the United States Army. He went from St. John's to Phoenix to Fort Ord, California, where he spent 6 months training in civilian clothes and using 22 rifles because the country had a lack of supplies and arms at that time. Max was assigned to the 45th Infantry, which was made up mostly of Arizona and New Mexico boys. They went from California to Abilene, Texas, and from there to the swamps of Louisiana. Not too long after they got to Louisiana, a large group of them were called up and informed that they were being discharged because of their age. Max was around 30 years old at that time. So he took his discharge papers, a Model A pickup which he had won in a poker game, and 2 of his buddies, and they headed for home. On December 7th, 1941, they arrived in Gallup, New Mexico to find it in total darkness. This surprised them very much, and they noticed candlelight in a service station window, so they stopped to try and find out what was going on, and they were informed that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor and that the city had been ordered to blackout. They really had a hard time believing this, but they went on to St. John's where it was confirmed. He was only in St. John's for 8 days before being recalled to active duty. And there he had a repeat of his former training, only this time more in earnest. This time he was assigned to the 90th Infantry that was made up mostly of Texas and Oklahoma boys. Max helped train these men and boys on the rifle. Many of them had never seen a rifle before, and he mentioned that even a few of them had no idea which end the bullet even came out of. Their training was in different climates, from the deserts of California, where it was sweltering in the day and freezing cold at night, to the swamps of Louisiana with the chiggers and mosquitoes and humidity, on to cold climate training in Trenton, New Jersey, and from there they were flown to England, where they received amphibious training. At this time, Germany was intently bombing England, and so they were dug into trenches and bunkers outside of the city. Before the Great Normandy invasion, and after 6 days of intense training, Max was part of those landing on Omaha Beach. The tide was out, and the barges were not able to get as close as they had planned, and so the men had to jump out of the barges, with many soldiers over their head in the water, and many drowned because of their heavy field packs. Max lost his rifle and tried several times to retrieve it, but ended up finally taking one off a fallen comrade. Today, over 9,000 crosses near there mark those who gave their lives during this landing. The Germans were no farther than across the street, firing directly at them. It made Max sick to see all of the dead and wounded lying about on the beach. Max got hit in the helmet with a bullet and thought he was injured because he could feel something wet in his hands, and so he called a medic over who checked him out, and much to Max's relief, he discovered that the bullet had gone straight through his helmet, knocking him down but not wounding him. He was involved in 11 days of heavy fighting, and at one point he and his friend Langdon and 2 lieutenants were assigned to take out a machine gun nest. As they were approaching the machine gun nests, one of them triggered a booby trap. The explosion ripped through Langdon's throat and killed the two lieutenants. Fortunately, Max was spared. However, the explosion broke both eardrums, temporarily blinded him, and severely injured his left leg. He was taken to a field hospital where they stabilized him and then flew him to a hospital in England, where he stayed until his eyes and his leg healed. When he was released from the hospital, Max was assigned to General Patton's Third Army. Max said that Patton was everything everyone said and then some. They were fighting out of Czechoslovakia towards Berlin, and here Max had many close calls. At one stage of the campaign, 3 enemy tanks needed to be taken out, and Max and a squad were assigned to take them out. The bazooka man had never handled the bazooka before, and so Max grabbed it from him, loaded it, and fired, taking out the first tank with a direct hit. He reloaded quickly and fired a little too soon, and so instead of taking out the second tank, he just disabled its firepower. He was reloading to take out the third tank, but it was coming too fast, and he barely got out of the way before the tank crushed the bazooka. Another time, he was rounding a corner in one of the cities and came face to face with an enemy soldier who shot him in the leg. The bullet went clear through the muscle and lodged in his thigh bone, and even though it hurt very badly, Max said it hurt much worse coming out than it did going in. During Max's time in the service, he was awarded 16 medals in all. General Patton himself pinned many of them on him. Among them were the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and the Purple Heart. After the war in Europe was over, Max volunteered to go to Japan. He was waiting for a flight to Japan when they got word that the bombs had been dropped and the war was over. So Max came back home to the St. John's area, where he worked for several cattle companies until the Korean conflict broke out. And of course, Max went and volunteered to go to Korea. He was assigned a platoon of Puerto Ricans because he could speak Spanish. He was there for 2 years, and for over 1 year of that time he saw action. He was wounded twice in action while in Korea, and of his 16 medals earned while he was in the military, 5 of them were received in Korea. Max came back home for a little while, and then, of course, Vietnam broke out. And yep, you guessed it, there was Max volunteering to go to Vietnam. The officer took one look at him and one look at his record and told him to go home. You've done your duty. Maximiliano C. Lucero, Private First Class, 358th Infantry, United States Army. For gallantry in action on 3rd of April 1945 in the vicinity of Dorndorf, Germany. During an attack on the town, a platoon was pinned down by intense sniper fire emanating from a building. At risk of his life, Private First Class Lucero voluntarily worked his way, under unrelenting fire, to a position from which he placed devastating rifle fire on the enemy-held building. Though in full view of the enemy, he advanced to the building and accurately threw a hand grenade into its entrance, which killed 1 enemy and forced 10 others to surrender. His gallant act enabled his company to move forward and take its objective, and was in accordance with high military tradition. Entered military service from Arizona by command of Major General Ernest. Asked if he considered himself a brave man because of so many decorations for bravery, Max's response was, "Hell no, I was scared all the time." In 1984, he was awarded the Man of the Year by the St. John's Kiwanis Club. Max's 2 nephews, who grew up listening to his stories, were both lifetime military and served in Vietnam. They both eventually died of complications of exposure to Agent Orange. This great patriot and war hero passed away just before Christmas 1986, and was laid to rest next to his mother in a humble grave in the St. John's Catholic Cemetery. We hope you've enjoyed this page from Apache County History. I want to give a special thanks to Ted Rabin, who sadly is no longer with us. He gave a speech when Max received the Man of the Year award, back in 1984, and most of the information in this video is taken from that speech. I also want to thank Jesse Gonzalez, who is Max's nephew, and was very helpful in providing additional information, and I really appreciate it. We hope you'll join us again next time for another page in Apache County history, and be sure and tell your friends.